Visions of William Branham. Objections overruled. This video is purposely intended to refute all allegations, false claims, and malicious insinuations made by the website Believe the Sign. Death of Marilyn Monroe.
I was in the mountains a few weeks ago, and way back when I was coming home, we went back, the family and I, to rest a little, where we were going again, the Lord willing, next week. And then back there one night, I saw a vision, and it was a lovely, pretty woman, looked young woman, running. She had her hand there, and she was perishing with a heart attack. A beautiful woman, and she dropped and was gone. And the angel of the Lord said, "Now, when you hear of this, remember, they're going to say that she committed suicide, but she died in a heart attack, and it's almost 4, so you just say 4 o'clock. And then he left me. And I didn't wake the family up in the little cow camp, or where the cowboys stay, where we go back there to round up the cattle. I just let them sleep until morning, and then the next day I mentioned it. And I said, some young woman, very attractive, is going to die in a heart attack. And on the road out 2 days later, there it come in on the radio that this Miss, I can't think of her name, Monroe, Mrs. Monroe. I think that was her stage name or whatever it was. Her name was something else. And she had died, and they said she committed suicide. Now, it don't make any difference how much I'd say it. They're still going to say she committed suicide, but the child did not. She died in a heart attack. And if you'd watch, she had her hand trying to get to the phone in her hand. She had a heart attack. They said sleeping pills were there. She'd been taking them for a month. See? Or more out of that bottle. She died in a heart attack, and she died about 4 or 5 seconds before 4 o'clock. Exactly.
Objection number 1. William Branham stated that he saw the vision before Marilyn Monroe died, but there is no public evidence that this happened beforehand. He first mentions the vision on October 12, 1962, months after Monroe's death. William Branham is not under obligation to record first publicly all his visions, before it come to pass. He was never instructed by God. But it must be noted, that whenever he has a vision he would always tell it to his family, friends, or church members, before it would come to pass. In the case of Marilyn Monroe, only his family members were informed of the vision, because they were on vacation, and it was just only 2 days after that it came to pass. He doesn't know when the vision would unfold, so it was just impossible for him to have it on record even if he wanted to. Objection number 2. William Branham stated that she died at 4 p.m., while Peter Lawson had a conversation with her at 7:30 that day. It is estimated that she actually died sometime between 7:45 p.m. and 1 a.m. Most likely around 8 p.m. Why would the vision be wrong about the time of death? This statement is both false and inaccurate. 1. William Branham never said 4 p.m. He only said 4 o'clock. Never made any reference, whether it was a.m. or p.m. 2. The official report on the timeline of Marilyn Monroe's death is actually questionable and debatable. It was never conclusive. This is what Wikipedia stated: many questions remain unanswered regarding the circumstances and timeline of Monroe's death after her body was found. Many elements of this timeline have often been brought into question. Most notable are the discrepancies in exactly what time Monroe either made or received her last phone call, and at what time during the late night and early morning hours of August 4 and 5 her body was discovered. On the morning of August 5, 1962 at 6 a.m., Murray changes her story and now says she went back to bed at midnight and only called Dr. Greenson when she awoke at 3 a.m. and noticed the light still on. Both doctors, Dr. Ralph Greenson and Dr. Hyman Engelberg, also changed their stories, and now claim Monroe died around 3:50 a.m. Police note Murray appears quite evasive and extremely vague, and she would eventually change her story several times. Despite being a key witness, Murray travels to Europe and is not questioned again. Objection number 3. Why did his vision state that the cause of death was a heart attack, when it was clearly caused by an overdose of barbiturates. This statement, once again, is both lacking and misleading. The cause of death, according to official report, is suicide through overdose ingestion of barbiturates, to put it strictly. But the cause of death is not actually conclusive, as it was disputed by other forensic experts. According to the website, End All Fire Marilyn Monroe Goddess Confacts, Coroner Curfey had based his determination that Marilyn had committed suicide by the amount of sedatives in her body, the presence of prescription bottles for the sedatives, the absence of signs of foul play, her previous suicide attempts, and the opinion of Dr. Greenson. This opinion, however, was not shared by some key forensic experts, who argued that there were no traces of numbital in her stomach or intestinal tract. Also, there should have been specific crystals and evidence of the yellow capsules, in which numbital is packaged. Not only were there no capsule parts, there was no yellow dye in her stomach. Spota points out that in Marilyn's blood count, there were 8 milligrams of chloral hydrate and 4.5 milligrams of numbital, but in her liver there was a count of 13 milligrams, a much higher concentration of numbital. The ratio of numbital found in the blood compared to that in the liver suggested that Marilyn lived for many hours after the ingestion of that drug. This means that while Marilyn was alive and mobile, throughout the day, the process of metabolizing the numbital she had taken had reached the liver, and was beginning the process of excretion. The barbiturates were absorbed over a period of not minutes but hours. This report is consistent with what Greenson himself called her somewhat drugged condition. The idea of an injection of barbiturates was also implausible for 2 reasons. There were no needle marks found on her body after very close examination, plus an injection of such a high dosage of barbiturates would have caused immediate death, leaving clear bruising. Spoto explains that one possible explanation that was consistent with physical evidence was that the drugs were administered in an enema, which would account for the abnormal, anomalous discoloration of the colon. If Marilyn did die of a rectally administered overdose of drugs, it makes the concept of suicide a bit ludicrous and opens up 2 other possibilities, accident and murder. However, there is one piece of evidence that is very interesting. There was also evidence of cyanosis, an indication that death had been very quick. According to Texas Heart Institute, cyanosis is a condition in which the lips, fingers, and toes appear blue. It happens in some people with congenital heart defects that cause the blood to circulate abnormally. In people with congenital heart defects, cyanosis can happen if the defect allows oxygen-poor blood from the right side of the heart to enter the left side of the heart directly, instead of traveling to the lungs for more oxygen. In the left side of the heart, the oxygen-poor blood mixes with oxygen-rich blood to be pumped through the body. This clearly coincides with what William Branham had stated, that Marilyn Monroe died of a heart attack. Based on this piece of evidence, and the absence of a conclusive report on the cause of death, we can safely speculate that Monroe died because of heart failure after taking drugs. So in conclusion, the vision of William Branham is highly probable if not accurate. But we believe it was on the dot according to the vision. One witness account says Marilyn was declared dead at 3:50 a.m., which is almost 4, though Brother Branham assumed it was a few seconds before 4. And the presence of cyanosis is a strong indication that Marilyn died of a heart failure.
About this Marilyn Monroe, when she died, they'll never believe but what that girl committed suicide, but she did not commit suicide. She died in a heart attack. I seen it days before it happened and told them about it, but they wouldn't listen to me.